I've pinned the baffle material open here with about a 1-inch overlap to where it will be folded back when it's turned into a baffle. And again, that'll give me some Climashield underneath this edge. So that stitching runs all the way down and holds this in place. I think it'll work out pretty well. So I've created a little tab, I think you can see it there, and the zipper will slide underneath that, and I will stitch it down. So this will be held in place like that with some pins. I have put in the zipper. To do that, I made a little fold over tab, slid the zipper underneath it, and stitched as close as I could along this edge. So the zipper has 2 layers of fabric on top and 1 on the bottom, and it is pretty good. That's just one side of the zipper, of course. The other side will be attached to the other edge. I've also folded these under and give them a basting stitch so that I can put them together like so all the way along here and get a nice clean edge. And then the Climashield material will be slid in lengthwise. I think that'll work. The alternative was to put the Climashield in, then fold it over and stitch it, but I think that will be kind of a hassle, fighting with the insulation material and trying to stitch that up. Getting close to having the baffle system and the zipper completed. After I stitched in this material along the edge, I went along at each point and did about a 3/4 inch stitch here to hold the material in place, so that when these baffle pieces are stitched together, that will encourage the Climashield to be underneath this edge here. Oh, 1/2 inch or so, maybe an inch. I've stitched in the other side of the zipper. Pretty straightforward job. Just put it underneath and zips up pretty good. Now the baffle under here will be filled with Climashield, and it will extend across this new area. So I've added about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 inches here. Let's check, see what that is. Yep, 3.5 inches there, and it tapers as we go down here because I don't need any extra. And eventually, one of the last things that'll happen is this will get stitched across. So this will get stitched together all the way down to the end where the foot baffle will get installed. And remember, this will be Climashield here across. I've got a 24-inch wide double layer cut, and that will be going in there shortly. I've put together, out of the scraps left over, my Climashield, this stuffing for the baffle. This will go in here, down to the end. And you can see I've had to put together a bunch of chunks because this is all I have left out of 2 yards. I think next time, if I were to build one of these again, I would definitely get 3 yards or at least 2.5. But I did manage to get enough that will fill the baffle right here all the way down. This is hollow, of course, and that will give me insulation in the extra piece on the chest area. You'll see some stitches. I do that just to make sure that it stays in place. They're very loose though. They don't actually pull anything together. They're just there, sort of a crisscross diagonal pattern to make sure that everything stays in place. So I'm going to put that in. Hopefully it won't rip, and it should fit pretty good. Well, I have the Climashield in the baffle. It fills it nicely. That will give me some overlap. I'm going to have to adjust it a little bit because I want it to be flat in this direction, but not too bad. I can do that pretty easily, just moving the fabric around and the Climashield to get the zipper more on top relative to that. And then I will stitch both ends and it'll be done. I can move on to the main Climashield sandwich that goes underneath and making the foot box. Getting close. I've pinned one of these after sliding the Climashield as far over as I could to this edge. Now I'm going to do a little bit of tack stitching on that to hold it in place. I can feel that I am going through the Climashield, which is a good thing. These stitches do not need to be particularly good, and they aren't going to be. So the whole idea is just to hold it in place so that I can machine stitch it later. So I'm just going to do this 3 or 4 times. Okay, I'll snip that off underneath. And we're done. Managed to stitch it together, not too bunched up. I've got a good wad of Climashield underneath. So I'm just going to keep doing that until I get it done. Hey, I've been working on tacking down the Climashield in the center, and probably I've spent 3 or 4 hours on it, and I haven't been able to get it done because this stuff fights me every inch of the way. So rather than continue to struggle with that and also having to rip out the stitches that I do wrong, you know, fold it over or just anyway, I went out and bought some 2-inch pins. These are for corsage, it says. I'm hoping that the 2-inch pins will work better than the little 1-inch ones that I've used for other fabrics. So I'm going to pin this up again, and this time I'm just going to stitch straight up the side, about 1.5 inches in from the edge of the Climashield. Yes, that will create an uninsulated cold spot, small one, you know, down the length, but I just can't fight with this thing anymore, and I think that will be doable. So that's what's up next. Hey, I have used my new large corsage pins to pin all up along the side. These things are 2 inches and have this lovely little round ball on the end, because regular pins don't work. They pop out, but these do the job. So I'm about to stitch up the length of the Climashield. I've already done the other side because I kind of wanted to practice before I got into this one. So I'm going to do some of this. I've got it set on a pretty wide stitch, very few stitches per inch, and hopefully that will allow me to rip out anything if I make a mistake. So I'm going to start out with a little back stitch here, and I'll be pulling out these big pins as I go along. Also want to keep this as tight as possible. Make sure that there are no puckers and it doesn't overlap itself. One of the things that tend to happen is that the fabric on the bottom side gets pulled faster than the stuff on the top. So I kind of have to pull back on the underside and pull forward on the top. That's looking pretty good. I like this to be a continuous stitch all the way so that I don't have any loose ends and fabric is held in place really well. And you can probably tell if you've ever done any sewing that the way I'm doing this looks a little weird. I'm kind of off to the side. Well, that's because I want the whole thing to be out flat as I stitch through, as opposed to hanging down. I'm on the pool table and that's working pretty well. So I'm going to end this segment and we'll see how it goes.